Another important topic from the respiration: heat production by the living organisms. Heat production by the living organisms. So heat production by the living organisms, it's indirectly we can say heat production by the living organisms. Indirectly we can say this is importance of respiration. Indirectly we can understand the heat production by the living organisms, also called as importance of respiration. Why? Because heat produced only during the cellular respiration. When the cellular respiration takes place in our body, when the energy produces in every cell, that means when glucose is oxidized in the presence of oxygen, energy produced. When energy produced, carbon dioxide and water is produced. So this carbon dioxide is generally it is warmer in nature, so that the heat is liberated. So in this way, carbon dioxide it has warmer in character. At the same time, the cells in the body also producing the heat during the respiration. So that indirectly we can understand heat production by the living organisms. Indirectly, that heat produced in the process of respiration. In the process of respiration, when the energy produces, heat is liberated. So that is about heat produced by the living organisms. So this heat is constantly maintaining in our body. So for the maintaining the heat in our body, what happened here? Cellular respiration is taking place. So cellular respiration takes place in our body for the maintaining the heat. See, suppose example, our normal body temperature is 98.4 Fahrenheit. So this normal body temperature is continuously maintaining. That is maintained through only cellular respiration. So cellular respiration is a continuous process. In this process, the energy is released. At the same time, the heat is liberated. This heat is maintaining. Suppose some of the heat is also lost through our body. Our body lost some of the heat. Then this lost heat again it is replaced by the continuous cellular respiration. So in this way, the energy is produced. In cellular respiration, the major intention of the cellular respiration is energy is produced. At the same time, the heat is liberated. The heat is liberated and energy is produced. So in this way we can understand heat production by the living organisms means heat is produced in the living organisms through cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, the energy is liberated. At the same time, besides the energy, there is also heat is liberated. So this is the importance of respiration. And in this process, generally we can observe the energy produced in the cellular respiration. Okay, this energy, some of the energy utilized for body activities or metabolic activities. Okay, the energy which is produced in the respiration, in cellular respiration, that energy utilized for our body activities, and some of the energy to be utilized for keeping the body warm. Some of the energy utilized to keeping the body warm. Why? Because continuously our body lost some temperature due to the exposure of our body to the atmosphere. So some of the heat is continuously we lost temperature from our body. This lost temperature is replaced continuously through the cellular respiration, so that the cellular respiration keeps our body warmer. That shows about if the cellular respiration is stopped, our body lost the temperature. If our body lost the temperature, it is indirectly we have died. It is equal to the death of the person. That's why the died person, if we can observe, that body temperature will be zero. If the died person's, the dead person temperature, if we can observe, that body temperature is zero. We cannot observe any temperature in the died person, but only the living person has the temperature. The temperature is continuously produced from the cellular respiration. The cellular respiration major intention is to produce the heat and also energy. So this energy utilized for the metabolic activities like digestion, excretion, transportation. Okay, different types of metabolic activities going on. So to perform the normal body functions continuously, some of the energy is utilized, and whereas some of the some of the energy is utilized to keep the body warm, and remaining energy, suppose if there is any remaining energy, that remaining energy stored in the form of ATP, then remaining energy is storage in the form of ATP. So what is ATP? Suppose if we observe ATP, ATP means adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. This is the full name of ATP. The full form of ATP is adenosine triphosphate. This adenosine triphosphate, it is also otherwise called as energy currency. We call it as energy currency. అంటే నిలువ ఉన్న శక్తి సామర్థ్యాన్ని మనం ఎనర్జీ కరెన్సీ లేదా ఏటీపీ అంటాం. సో దట్ ఎక్సెస్ ఆఫ్ ఎనర్జీ ఫ్రమ్ అవర్ బాడీ, దిస్ storage in the form of ATP. ATP means adenosine triphosphate. Suppose example, what we have taken the food material, that food material produce the energy. This energy at a time we cannot consume, but some of the energy utilized for the body activity, some of the energy is utilized to keep the body warm, and some of the energy is storage in the form of ATP. ATP is nothing but energy currency, or this is the storage energy in our body. This storage energy we utilize for the different purpose. Suppose when we are in willful starvation, suppose during the willful starvation we cannot eat the food, but though we can do the work. How it is possible? When we do not eat the food, we can do the work. That is possible through the ATP. Suppose this ATP, generally ATP we can write like this. ATP we can write like this, 3 phosphate. ATP means triphosphate, no? So the here 1 2 3 phosphates are here. So suppose this is the first, second, third phosphate. So this third phosphate, it consists of most of the energy. So when we are going through the willful starvation, what happens? This ATP, this third phosphate, it is oxidized and produce the energy to continue our life activities. So in this way, the 3 phosphates are becoming into 2 phosphates. So first initially ATP is with 3 phosphates, but one of the phosphate is oxidized to produce the energy during the willful starvation. So the 2 phosphates are remained. These 2 phosphates are called as ADP, or adenosine diphosphate. This adenosine diphosphate, it is again reconstructed when we take the food again. Suppose when our willful starvation is completed, when we take the food, from that food the energy releases. This energy, from this energy, the excess of energy, it is added as a phosphate to the ADP. Suppose the excess of energy, from the excess of energy, one phosphate is added to the ADP. So that addition of phosphate to the ADP to form ATP is called phosphorylation. See, this is called phosphorylation. What is phosphorylation? Phosphorylation is nothing but when the phosphate is added to the ADP. అసలు ఇక్కడ ఏడీపీ ఎలా ఫామ్ అయిందంటే, ఏటీపీలో నుండి ఒక ఫాస్ఫేట్ మనం ఉపవాసం ఉన్నప్పుడు బయటకు వచ్చి ఆక్సిడైజ్ అయ్యి ఎనర్జీ ఇచ్చింది కదా, అలా ఎనర్జీ ఇచ్చిన ఆ ఫాస్ఫేట్ అనేది బయటకు వెళ్ళిపోయినప్పుడు మిగిలిపోయిన ఏటీపీస్ 2 ఉన్నాయి కాబట్టి దాన్ని ఏడీపీ అన్నాం. ఈ ఏడీపీలో మళ్ళీ ఫుడ్ తీసుకుంటున్నప్పుడు ఏమవుతుందంటే ఒక ఫాస్ఫేట్ అడిషనల్గా వచ్చి యాడ్ అవుతుంది. ఎక్సెస్ ఆఫ్ ఎనర్జీ, మనం తీసుకున్న ఫుడ్లో నుంచి వచ్చిన ఎక్సెస్ ఆఫ్ ఎనర్జీ ఏదైతే ఉందో, దట్ ఫాస్ఫేట్ యాడింగ్ టు ద ఏడీపీ టు ఫార్మ్ ఏటీపీ. అంటే ఏడీపీ కాస్త మళ్ళీ ఏటీపీగా మారిపోతుంది. ఇలా addition of phosphate to the ADP to form ATP is called phosphorylation. If this occurs in the presence of oxygen, that is called oxidative phosphorylation. In this way, our body can store the energy in the form of ATP. So here the heat production by the living organisms. So the heat production by the living organisms which takes place through the respiration, especially this is the cellular respiration. The cellular respiration major intention is to produce the energy and heat. So when the energy is produced, here some of the energy utilized for the metabolic activities like digestion, respiration, excretion, transportation, whereas some of the energy utilized to keep the body warm, and remaining energy which is storage in the form of ATP. ATP is nothing but energy currency or adenosine triphosphate. This ATP sometimes it is oxidized and produced energy when we are willful starvation, and again when the excess of energy is formed in our body, that excess of energy is added to the ADP to form ATP. Such process is called phosphorylation. So this is what about heat production by the living organism. This all can be done in the presence of oxygen. This is possible only when the oxygen is available. This process can be done. Suppose if the oxygen is absent. Suppose if the oxygen is absent. When the oxygen is absent, the muscle can perform anaerobic respiration. So what we have discussed, this is all aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration means in the presence of oxygen, the glucose it is oxidized and produce the energy. But when the oxygen availability is lack of, when the oxygen availability is reduced, when the oxygen is not present in the muscle, then that muscle can perform the anaerobic respiration. In this anaerobic respiration, what happens? The glucose is converted into lactic acid. The glucose is converted into lactic acid. When the lactic acid forms, the muscle pain occurs. The muscle pain can be having in our body. When the muscle pain occurs, we can feel tiredness feeling. That's why if we take some rest or if we take deep breath, when the oxygen sufficiently takes into our body, again this muscle pain will be disappeared. That lactic acid will be converted into again glycogen. That glycogen again it will produce the glycogen convert into glucose, and glucose can produce the energy. In this way, when the oxygen is present, the completely glucose is oxidized and produce the energy. But when the oxygen availability reduces during the lack of oxygen, the muscle can perform anaerobic respiration. In this anaerobic respiration, the glucose is not burning. Here glucose is not oxidized, but glucose converted into lactic acid. The lactic acid it is forming some tiredness feeling or muscle pain in our body. This muscle pain, when we take the sufficient oxygen again, this lactic acid again it will be converted into glycogen. That glycogen again it will turn into glucose during the necessity time. That glycogen is converted into glucose, and glucose can produce the energy. This is what about the heat production by the living organism. And one more small topic from the respiration of living organisms, and one more is that evolution of gases exchanging system. One more is here, evolution of gases exchanging system. So evolution in gases exchanging system, if we can observe, evolution means the process of acquiring changes in the living organism. Evolution in gases exchanging system. Evolution in gases exchanging system. See, what is evolution? We already discussed in the first chapter. Evolution is nothing but process of acquiring changes. Process of acquiring changes in living organisms is called evolution. Suppose this evolution we can observe from the protozoans to mammals. Suppose the living organisms have evolved from the single celled organisms to multicellular organisms. The single celled organism starts from the protozoa to ends with mammals. Then let us see, from the protozoa to mammals there are 14 phylums in the animal kingdom. So if you can observe the 14 phylums: protozoa, porifera, coelenterata, platyhelminthes, nematohelminthes, annelida, arthropoda, mollusca, echinodermata. These are the non-chordates which do not have the backbone. And whereas the chordates are 5, or chordates or vertebrates are 5, like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, apes, mammals. Then let us see how these gases have a gases exchanging system, or evolution of gases exchanging system in these living organisms. First one, let us start with the first one is protozoa. See, the protozoa, from protozoa to annelida. Protozoa to annelida, there is 6 phylums: protozoa, porifera, coelenterata, platyhelminthes, nematohelminthes, annelida. From protozoa to annelida, these all the living organisms they respire through the simple diffusion process. Because these are the living organisms, they do not have any specific respiratory organ for the respiration, but their respiration takes place through the simple diffusion. That means through the body surface the oxygen is diffused into the body, whereas carbon dioxide is expelled out of the body through the simple diffusion process. Diffusion means the process of movement of molecules from the higher concentration to lower, that is called simple diffusion. Through the simple diffusion process, through the body, through the surface of the body, here the gases exchange takes place from the protozoa to annelida. Then annelida after, then next we can see that is what about arthropoda. If we see the seventh phylum, arthropoda, that is seventh phylum. This is example is cockroach. Suppose example cockroach. See, if we observe the cockroach it has the tracheal respiratory system. First time the tracheal respiratory system, a system is developed in the arthropoda, that is tracheal respiratory system. So tracheal respiratory system, if we can observe, suppose see, if we observe the cockroach here, this is, just assume that it is a cockroach. So there is more than 10 segments in the cockroach. Okay, see, this is a one segment, here is a one segment. So like this there are segments present on surface of the body of cockroach. This segment, outside of this segment we can observe a small pore. This outside of this segment we can observe a small pore, either this side or this side we can see small pores. These small pores are called what this the small pores which are present on outside of these are called spiracles. We call them as spiracles. The small pores which are present outside of these segments of the cockroach are called spiracles. The spiracles which opens into the small chamber is called atrium. Okay, this is atrium. That atrium which connected to the tubes is called trachea. So like this the small pores outside of the segment is called spiracle. Spiracle which opens into the small chamber is called atrium. Atrium which connected to the tubes is called tracheas. So in this way, here we can observe, in this way the air passes into the spiracles. Suppose the air passes through the spiracle to atrium, atrium to trachea, tracheas to tracheal system. So spiracles, atrium, trachea all together they connect with the tracheal system. So this is, so see, this is spiracle which opens into the atrium connected to the trachea. This trachea all together it is called tracheal system. So in this way the respiration of the cockroach occurs. Next one is, so protozoa, porifera, coelenterata, platyhelminthes, nematyhelminthes, annelida, up to annelida, simple diffusion. Then arthropoda, seventh one is cockroach. Here arthropoda example cockroach. Next one, third one is here arthropoda after mollusca. If we observe the mollusca, here Ctenidia, just like comb like gills, we can observe in the mollusca. And whereas echinodermata, if we can see, the echinodermata is also like simple gills we can observe. So simple gills we can observe. These are all the different types of respiratory organs and the respiration from the protozoa to echinodermates. These are the 9 phylums. So protozoa simple diffusion, porifera simple diffusion, then coelenterata simple diffusion, platyhelminthes, nematyhelminthes simple diffusion, even annelida also simple diffusion. Suppose annelida example is here if we can observe annelida example, that is earthworm. Annelida example is earthworm. So the earthworm respiration takes place by the simple diffusion, but here the respiratory organ is skin. For the respiration through the respiratory organ of the earthworm is skin. For the proper respiration of the skin should be always moist. If the skin moisture is lost, that earthworm will die. That's why earthworm it never comes out. Only during the rainy season when their burrows are filled with water it comes out, but otherwise the earthworms they never come out. Why we cannot see the earthworms other than rainy season? Because that skin if it is dried it cannot respire, so that it will die. That's why it makes the burrows into the soil and it leaves there to protect itself from the adverse environmental condition. So this is an adaptation. The earthworm has an adaptation to make the burrows into the soil and leaves there to free from the adverse environmental condition and to keep the skin moisture to follow the respiration easily. That's why it makes the burrows into the soil and leaves there. And to follow the skin respiration, the skin should be always moist, or moisture skin should it is needed. So like this, the skin respiration takes place in the earthworm. If the skin respiration takes, that respiration which is carried out by the skin is called cutaneous respiration. Very very important. What is cutaneous respiration? The respiration which is carried out by the skin is called cutaneous respiration, whereas arthropoda tracheal respiration, then mollusca Ctenidia are combed gills, gills respiration, then echinodermata simple gills are tube feet which has some respiratory parts. Through this the respiration takes place. In this way, from protozoa to echinodermates we have discussed. Then these are all the non-vertebrates. Non-vertebrates means from protozoa to echinodermates, these are non-vertebrates which do not have any backbone, and whereas vertebrates are five. The five vertebrates, if we can observe, five vertebrates, they are fishes, amphibians, reptiles, aves, mammals. Suppose fishes. If we see the fishes, the fish respire also takes place by the gills. Then here gills, if the respiration takes place by the gills, it is called bronchial respiration. Very very important. What is bronchial respiration? The respiration which is carried out through the gills is called bronchial respiration. That's why when the fish is in water, it frequently opens its mouth and closes its mouth. What is the reason? When the fish opens its mouth, that oral cavity, it receives the water. From this oral cavity, see, suppose from the oral cavity to pharynx, from the pharynx to next, see, internal bronchial apertures to gill pouches to gill lamella. So in this way, when the water passes through this way, oral cavity, pharynx, internal bronchial apertures, gill pouches, gill lamella. So in this way, when the water is passing, already the water, it has the dissolved oxygen. The water, it consists of dissolved oxygen. This dissolved oxygen, when it passes through the oral cavity, pharynx, internal bronchial apertures, gill pouches, and when finally it reaches to the gill lamella, that gill lamella, it is bathing with dissolved oxygen. That means the gill lamella absorbs the oxygen, at the same time it releases the carbon dioxide. Through this released carbon dioxide with water, it expelled out through the external bronchial apertures. So this is what about the fish's respiration which carried out through the gills. This is called bronchial respiration. And next one is amphibians. Then amphibians also respire with the two different types of respiratory organ. One is the skin respiratory organ, another one is lungs or the respiratory organs. Most of the respiration of the amphibian, suppose 70% of the respiration of the amphibian, it takes place by the skin, because it's what it is a mixed blood animal. Generally amphibians are mixed blood animals, so to convert the pure blood, it needs more oxygen, so that oxygen is diffused through the skin. Then this oxygen relay, it is diffused into the blood. So that's why here skin, it is placing major role in the respiration. So most of the 70% of respiration in the amphibian, it takes place through the skin, and also it takes place through the lungs. So two different types of respiratory organ. If the respiration carried out through the skin is called cutaneous respiration. If the respiration carried out through the lungs is called pulmonary respiration. Pulmonary respiration. Next, and another one is reptiles. Reptiles also through the reptile respiration through the lungs. Very very important. Next, aves means here birds also respire through the lungs, and mammals also respire through the lungs. So in this way, from the protozoa to mammals, we have discussed the gaseous evolution system. See, first one, in the beginning, the protozoa, it has only simple diffusion process. But when it comes to the annelida, the skin is placing major role in the respiration. Whereas in arthropoda, tracheal system. Whereas in mollusca, echinodermates and fishes, there is gills are developed. From the next amphibians to reptiles, reptiles, aves, mammals, the lungs are developed. So in this way, the respiratory organs have been developed in the living organisms. So this is all about the gases exchanging system. Gases exchanging system and evolution in gases exchanging system. So have a nice day.